this video, I'm going to share with you the biggest mistake that most Catholic men make and how you can overcome it to become a more confident and better version of yourself the way that God intended. But before I tell you exactly what that is, first I want to take a look at a true story. This story is amazing. I read it the first time and I thought it was made up, but this is actually a real story. It comes from a historical account by Thomas Costian called The Three Edwards. Listen to this. There was once a duke named Reynold III. Reynold was the ruler of the kingdom, and he was a very large man, often called by his nickname Crassus, which is Latin for fat. After a particularly violent quarrel with his younger brother Edward, Edward resolved to overthrow his brother. After leading a successful revolt against Reynold, Edward captured him alive and imprisoned him in the Newark Castle. But Edward did not just throw his brother in a cell, lock the door behind him, and throw away the key. He had something far more innovative in mind. Edward had a room built around his extremely fat brother, complete with doors and windows, except this room contained no bars. The entrances were built too small for Reynold to fit through, although a smaller man could come and go as he pleased. Edward said that Reynold would regain his title and property in full only if he could fit through the door. This sounds simple enough, but again, Edward had a trick up his sleeve. Every day, he had the castle chefs bring exquisite foods to the room of Reynold, and every day, Reynold was presented with a choice: either overcome his addiction or die in that room. When the Duke Edward was accused of being cruel to his brother, he simply responded with, "My brother isn't a prisoner here. He may leave whenever he so wills." Reynold lived in this room for 10 years, becoming fatter and fatter, as Edward had expected he would. He wasn't released until Edward died in battle, and by then he was so unhealthy that he was dead within a year. Reynold was never able to overcome his appetite, and it is what led to his death. Listen, you and I are just like Reynold. We are held captive by some of our vices. And if we simply quit our vices, then we could exit our self-imposed prisons and go and claim the kingdom which God the Father has prepared for us in his Son, Jesus Christ. We are just like Reynold. We choose to be addicted. We choose to fall into these vices over and over again, and we keep ourselves captive. The prisons that we're in are largely constructs of our own imagination. They're beliefs that we have about our past self that may not even be true anymore, or a lack of belief in God the Father, who can make us into an invincible force in the name of Jesus. So what's the point of all this, and what's the mistake that I see so many young men making? The answer is a failure in temperance. Let me explain. St. John Bosco says that gluttony destroys more vocations than any other vice. And the reason for it is because if we're attached to carnal pleasures, if we're attached to physical pleasures, then we'll never be attached to spiritual pleasures. And if we're not attached to spiritual pleasures, we're not experiencing contemplation, we're not experiencing sweetness and prayer at all, then how are we going to lead our wives and our children to heaven? Or if you're a priest, how are you going to lead your parishioners to heaven? That's your job. It's your job to be the most spiritually capable person in your family, because you're going to be the head someday, and everybody else is going to look up to you for guidance. So as men, we have to learn to detach ourselves from the pleasures of the flesh, specifically at the table. Because if you can't overcome the vice of intemperance as regards food, I don't think you'll ever overcome it as regards lust and a man's sexual appetite. So we have to win that battle first. And if we win that battle, then everything else starts to fall into place. If we learn to say no to our body, even when our body is begging for something, that muscle, that virtue, that willpower carries over into everything else that we do. And St. John Chrysostom says that fasting is to the soul what food is to the body. The more that you fast, the stronger that your soul becomes, the more powerful your prayers become. There's a reason that prayer and fasting are always attached in the Bible. And Jesus even says some demons will not come out without prayer and fasting. If you want to be a good husband for your wife someday, if you want to be a good and chaste father for your children someday, somebody who your children can look up to and be proud of and not disgusted by, then you have to have the virtue of Temperance. So start today. Get rid of all the junk food in your cabinet. You don't need it. Get in really good shape. Get lean. Get hungry, because those are the type of people that Jesus is going to call to rebuild his church. If you are complacent and you like being lazy and you like being pacified by food and you like being pacified by the pleasures of the flesh, you will never be the saint that God is calling you to be. You must overcome your appetites, specifically at the table first, and then everything else will fall into place. So if you're a man and you're watching this, do not underestimate the power that God has given you, the grand plan that he has for your life. Get out of his way. Let him take control of your life. Give him everything and make a sacrifice in his name. Start fasting at least some of the time. And if you do that, you'll be able to lose weight, so to speak, and escape your self-imposed prisons and claim the kingdom that God the Father has prepared for you in God the Son. And if you enjoyed that and you want to join me and a group of other men in praying the rosary daily, then click on the link in the description and join my Discord. God bless.